Uh, in the last video, in the last section, we have talked about mostly about guards, strategies, passport, and those kind of stuff. I don't recall anymore. So, today's section will complete. Hopefully, we complete the chapter of authentication, or you could say guard. So, what we are going to do is we have to conclude and add the JWT module and JWT strategy. But before that, let's ask what's the usage of the JWT and JWT strategy. So if you know by now, for JSON Web Token, it's usually meant for authorization and giving the token towards the user or the client, whoever is accessing, so therefore they're able to access other functions that are guarded, for like the guards that we use. So in our case, we are using the similar concept whereby we are returning the moment the user has logged in. We are returning, instead of returning a user, we are returning a token. And next step would be, we'll make a function that is only allowed for those people who have the JWT token. Other than that, they're not able to use or access the endpoint. And that endpoint would be like a profile or a user, the current user. So we'll be using guard there as well. So we are guarding that place, but using a different strategy. Unlike the local strategy, we'll be using another strategy, and that strategy will be the JWT, which validates based on the JWT. So what we have to do, so in here, as you've noticed, we have JWT module, so that means we have to import it. But before that, let's add some logic whereby we have to have the JWT. So we will return the moment the user or the local strategy has been correct. We'll return, instead of a user, we'll return a token. So what we have to do is we will go towards the auth service, and then in the auth service, in here, what we have to do is, before that, we have to install some components because we don't have the JWT module. So what we have to do is npm install, and we will say Nestjs, and then it will be called I think it will be called JWT. I hope I'm correct here. So then here I'll say another component package will be called passport, and it will be JWT. Now next thing we need to have is, as well, just for the TypeScript way, we need to install the types of the passport JWT. So let's install that quickly. So next thing would be, in the auth service, since it's our provider, what we have to do here, we are giving a provision here. So this function will be called, I think we could say get token, or we could just say sign user. So we'll make that function as sign user, and in the sign user, in the parameter, what we get is the current user. So we'll be having a type of user. That will be what we are getting. So let's import that. So what we will do, and then next would be, we will get something called JWT service, and it is coming from our JWT module that we have installed it just now. So we'll say private JWT service, and it will be a JWT service. So next thing would be, in here we don't have to do anything, but what we have to do is only use something called sign method in the JWT service. So what we'll do is say this dot JWT service, and when you hover on it, you will see several function, and what we care about is only the sign method. In the sign method, so what it does, it encodes anything that we are giving in our in the data, whatever we are giving, it encodes it based on a secret. So a secret base, something that could be called a key, but for this video or for this course we are not talking about that. It's unrelated. So what we'll go is sign. So in here, in the sign, what we'll add for our data to be encoded will be email, and email alone, because we don't have much data here. And we'll take the user here and we say user.email. So what it returns, it will return a string, and that string is the token that needs to be returned towards the user. So since it needs to be returned to the client, what we have to do is go to our auth controller, and in here we are initializing constructor, and that constructor will have something called auth service. So the auth service will be the one that we have edited before. So we will go at the type of auth service, and what we'll do is we will replace the return. Instead of returning a request to the user, we'll return a token. So we'll go and say this dot auth service dot sign user, and in the sign user we'll say request and user. Since we already got, so if they are validated, we always get a user in that request. So that will be it. But what we have to do next would be we have to import the module, because in the auth service we have imported JWT service. So what we have to do is go to the auth module, and in the imports we'll import our JWT module. But you can't do that just that. Like, you have to add some configuration for the JWT module, and this configuration is meant for only JWT. But yeah, so when you say dot, there's something called register. So what it registers is some configuration that is needed for JWT to work, and what we'll do is say register here, and in here it's asking for us options. So this function, this method, you could think of like auth module having that, our auth module having that, and it will be called static register. So a way of doing things, right? So we could do and then auth module will have the register as well. But in here, so JWT will have register, and what we'll do here, let's hover on it. I forgot what we have. So it will be called secret. So the secret for encoding, we'll just call it here secret. And what else do we need here is sign options, and in the sign option we'll mention the expiry of it, and we will mention it will expire in 60 minutes, I guess 60 minutes. So I hope that's it. So now let's test that. Let's give a test run here. So npm run start dev. So seems to be fine. Now what's next would be after, I think, yeah, before that, let's test it out. So in order to test it out, we'll open our beautiful Postman here, and it will take some time. So we'll be using the similar one, the similar data we had. So the body, so we'll say Khalid Suban, but we need to create the user first. So we'll say send, so post, and then we created it. Now we'll do the login, and now we receive the JWT token that is on for 60 minutes, valid for 60 minutes. So we got our JWT ready. Now next would be to guard or to validate, for example, an endpoint that needs to be guarded based on, so it will be valid based on the JWT token. So if they have a valid JWT token, they're able to access that. Other than that, they are not able to access it. So what we'll do is let's create our endpoint first. So we'll call that user, or get current user. And in the current user, usually any strategy that you will use, it will push towards in the request. So we'll do similar to what we have done here, request. So we'll use request request and request, and in here we'll mention return this, actually request.user. But before that, we have to register or create our JWT strategy. So what we need to do is create a file under here in the auth, and we will call that JWT strategy and then ts. I hope that I did it correctly. Yeah, alright. So now here we'll mention export class JWT strategy, and we will extend a passport strategy similar to what we have done before. And what we need here in our parentheses, we need to have a strategy. But before that, let's import that. Let's make JWT strategy as a provider. So we'll make it as injectable. So import injectable. Next would be in here, which strategy do we need to use, similar to what we have done in local. So we used passport local, that strategy, but here it will be a bit different. We'll use the passport JWT. So we'll go passport JWT. That's right. Now in here we'll import our beautiful strategy, and we'll add that here. So next would be what we had done earlier. We are putting a constructor, and in the constructor we'll be having a super. In the super, similar to what we have done in local strategy, we are overriding some configuration in the JWT. So what we are trying to override, so we'll say curly braces, and what we want to override would be JWT from request. So make sure it is correct, because sometimes I already had that problem before and I got a problem, so I need to make sure as well. So what we'll do here is, let's just make it as empty for now. And what else do we need? We need to use in order for the validation to occur, we have to add our secret, similar to what we have done here. We have to have a secret validation. So what we need to import is something called secret or key. Make sure the capitalization, everything is correct. So here we'll put secret as similar to what we have in here. So secret. Now in here, what we have to do, JWT from request, we have to use some from here in the passport.js, something called extract JWT. So what it does is it will extract based on a strategy from the header, and the header I mean from the here. So it will check. So there are several ways of taking the data or the token from the header, and what we are going to use is, so use extract JWT and use dot, and we will be using from auth header as buried token. So we'll be using that. Make sure you took that as well. So from auth header as buried token, and the secret or key is correct. So now that will be it for the strategy. Now similar to the local strategy, we'll have a function called validate. So we'll go towards here, we'll say validate, and as a default it will give us a payload or data. You could say a payload, and it will be any, I'm not sure what it's inside. And what we'll do is we will, what did we do in our auth service, we said user.email, so the data we'll be getting from the payload will be email. So we'll say return, and in here we'll say email, and that email will be payload and email. So you could guess it that payload is similar to the token, so it will decode the token, and that token will get the data from what we have encoded before, and that will be email, and we will just return that specified email. It's weird that we didn't, I think, yeah, we should have added some objects instead of only email, but yeah, I think for now that will be okay. So validate will return an email, so if it is correct it will return okay. Other than that, the endpoint might not work. So next would be, we have to use this JWT strategy. So how do we do that? First we have to provide this in our auth module, so we'll go to our auth module and we'll register that as here in the providers. We'll mention JWT strategy and we imported it here. Now next thing would be, we will go to auth controller, and in the auth controller we'll change this to a get method, and that get method will be called user. So auth user, basically the endpoint, and in here we'll be using it doesn't matter the order of the decorators, so we'll be using use guards here, and in the use guards we'll be using auth guard similar to what we have done in passport, and this strategy will be called JWT. So local for local strategy and JWT for our JWT token. So now what we have to do is to run and test it out. So hopefully it works fine. So we will go towards our, so we'll take our data here, so we'll say take that token, and then we'll create another endpoint, and that endpoint, I think, yeah, first let's copy that, and we will put that endpoint here, and we will use the user endpoint, and we'll take this token, and what we will do is we'll go to authorization, and is it authorization? Yeah, and then in authorization we have something called bearer token, and the bearer token we will give the data in here. So before that, let's try it out without bearer token. So before that, let's try without it. So let's say auth user, so that's auth user, try to send it, and it's mentioning unauthorized. So that's as expected because the J strategy didn't get the token that we need. So let's enter our data, the token that we have gotten from before, and send it, and it works fine. That's great, first try, yes. All right, so I think that will be it for it, and we made it work. So now what you could do is use this provider, use guards across the project, and you could validate the endpoints, and if they didn't log in properly, it will say unauthorized. So now we have completed most of the basic stuff of authentication, and I think you can make a project with it, and that's what we will do in the next chapter, right? So we have done our JWT module, strategy, local strategy, auth service, auth controller, auth module, the passport module, and then the other modules, and the how communication is occurring between modules, and how you need to import it, and how the auth module file or the module file is the most important one. And yeah, I think hopefully I think the videos or tutorials were great. So now we will be putting everything together in one project and combining that project with a database, because we have never used database before. It was unnecessary and wasn't that important, but yeah, for showcasing the project, for showcasing how Nestjs works with a backend or database, so we'll do that in the next chapter. So thank you very much for listening and watching, and if you guys have any questions, just ask below, and I have as well I share my GitHub repo whenever and every time in the description, and you could check out based on the chapters, and it contains all the stuff that you need to have for every chapter. So yeah, take care, bye.